Or shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers in grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation podcast. With me today is a buddy of mine, Matias Ferreira. Matias is an immigrant from Montevideo, Uruguay. He moved to Atlanta, Georgia with his mom, dad, and two brothers in 1996 in pursuit of the American dream. Upon graduating from Morrow High School in 2007, Matias joined the United States Marine Corps as a machine gunner assigned to 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, 2nd Marine Division, stationed in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. During a combat tour, Operation Enduring Freedom to Helmand Province, Afghanistan in 2010, Matias stepped on an IED, improvised explosive device, causing him to lose both legs below the knees, amongst other injuries. Matias was awarded the Purple Heart, Combat Action Ribbon, and Navy Unit Citation, amongst other military awards. During a year and a half of rehabilitation at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, Matias competed in numerous races to include the Navy 5-miler, Army 10-miler, Marine Corps Marathon, Detroit Marathon, New York City Marathon, Disney Marathon, and several others. Matias is also part of an all-wounded warrior amputee softball team that competes all year round against military, first responders, and celebrity teams, spreading the message that life without limbs is limitless. Matias enjoys volunteering with numerous non-for-profit organizations that focus on rehabilitation, empowering your new normal, and renewing your faith. Most of these non-for-profit organizations are involved with adaptive sports, military veterans, children with physical disabilities, and law enforcement officers. Matias is currently an active duty police officer. Matias, welcome to the podcast. I am so pumped to have you on, brother.
I appreciate you having me, man. I love what you're doing. It's awesome. Who would have thought you were going to be starting a podcast?
Not me, that's for sure. I'm still, as it's going on, you're my fifth guest, and every time I record, I'm like, this is incredible. The guests that I've had on so far have been incredible. And as I was telling you before, my life was changed a little over a year and a half ago watching the Sean Ryan podcast when he interviewed a man named Eddie Penny. He was a retired Navy SEAL, Team 6 guy. And during the course of Eddie's interview, he got emotional recounting the story of the Extortion 17 incident in which Chinook was shot down in Afghanistan. His best friend, Jason Workman, was killed in the incident along with 17 other SEALs, 38 souls aboard total. And as he was recounting the story of escorting Jason's body back to his hometown, Eddie was visibly upset. Something about seeing this warrior tell the story and cry, for lack of a better word, subconsciously told me it was okay to do so. And I thought about it. Call I had 5 years before, a beautiful girl, 2-year-old named Dana, found floating in a pool that I had buried. And I began crying like a baby. And that started my journey to healing. And my healing journey after my first ayahuasca journey, which is really the basis for my healing. As I'm coming out of it, the universe told me that my life's pursuit was now going forth, helping other vets, first responders, heal theirs. So in that vein, I started a podcast so I could have guests like you who have unbelievably inspiring stories to show the men and women who are currently going through it that there is hope, there is inspiration. There are men like you who've done extraordinary things with their lives. And if you've healed, they could do the exact same thing. So again, I'm so pumped to have you as a guest. And for full transparency, both Matias and I work for the Suffolk County Police Department. Additionally, I was supposed to go to the Suffolk County Police Academy as an instructor. And I received a call right before I was supposed to get transferred. And I was told by a lieutenant there that there was someone going before me. And I was kind of pissed off. And I said, who? And he told me Matias was going. And I said, you know what, man? If you basically told me anyone else is going before me, because at that time I had 26, 27 years on a job, I would have been furious. I would have told him to stick it up his ass, frankly. But I said, you know what? After what this man has sacrificed, man, I have absolutely no problem with that. So, congratulations on you getting that spot. I know I heard about you for the first time when Newsday, a hometown Long Island newspaper, printed a story about you getting hired, and I was stunned. I'm like, man, this dude is hardcore after what he went through to become a police officer. Now, Matias is also, correct me if I'm wrong, definitely the first and still only double amputee police officer in the nation, correct?
So I was the first from what I was told. There's actually two more that I'm aware of now. They're on my softball team. So
Really?
one of them, Army veteran, double amputee below the knee. He was actually a single below the knee, and he had complications in the other leg. So I ended up amputating it, and then he ended up becoming a cop upstate New York. And the other guy is a Marine below the knee. He's a cop in Fort Worth, Texas. Who again,
Ah,
another guy on my team. So it's almost like we started a trend.
yeah, exactly. Here I'm thinking you're something special, bro. And it's
I know.
three
I
double
was,
amputees.
I was special for a little while, but I'm glad to see that there's other people doing it, because obviously it's something we could talk about, but you and I, we're just normal people, and I don't use the word normal like as frank, but more so like typical, right? Where you're typical people in society. And obviously, everyone has something to overcome, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But if my colleagues were to listen to this podcast, or people that know me, they'd go, "He's just a regular dude," just like you're just a regular guy. And what sets us apart is that we're starting this, trend of healing, of expression, of vulnerability that allows us to show, the human condition and what it's capable of doing.
Exactly. Very well said. And us who come from these warrior professions have always been told, and I know I grew up with a very stern father and was told from an early age or taught that it is weakness to show emotion, when in fact, I think most of us, and definitely you and I, realize that it's actual strength to show emotion and become vulnerable. Going on these podcasts where potentially, thousands, if not millions, could see you speaking and talking about the lowest points in your life and how you felt then, and you just exposing yourself to everyone, man. It takes balls, and I congratulate you for that. I've congratulated myself for that. I know in when I started this journey, the reason for me being here is because I was able to become as vulnerable as I could be and show everyone, my lowest of lows and how I healed from them and my missteps and everything else, man. We're imperfect beings. None of us will ever be anything other than that. So we could, when we show others that they're just like us, we are them. All I want to do is inspire and give them hope and show them they can heal like you and I have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a misconception that there's only one way of healing. You and I briefly talked about this on the phone the other day, but I've come to the realization that I was like, this is what works for me. You should try it out. Look, not everybody's going to be able to open up a Bible and pray to God and go into men's group and stuff. Like, not everybody's going to get that same healing power that I got from that. Or you doing your groups, not everybody's going to be, as open to do those things. But that's what's so important about healing is that there needs to be a lot of different approaches that work for different people. Not everybody gets to go to the gym. I used to talk about how the gym is my coping mechanism, as well as you. We need that. And
Absolutely.
when you get into the whole, psychological or physiological response to stress and to the gym and the good things that happen in your brain when you're working out, all different chemicals that are being released, these things are super helpful. But when you can't physically get to the gym because you're so freaking stressed out, your nervous system is shot, you're depressed, you don't want to leave your bed or your house or whatever, it's like, what else works for you? So that's when you got to start experimenting yourself with things. I was doing a lot of deep diving into meditation, yoga, reading books, getting to know mental health, therapy, church, surrounding myself around loved ones, explaining like, yo, like something doesn't seem right with me. Like, I don't know what's going on, was when I started to receive and acknowledge that, hey, maybe something's wrong and it's okay. There's something wrong, but we need to identify it and move forward.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments. And number one, it's okay to not be okay. And I too was going through my journey after I retired. I was medically retired. I blew on my back, and I thought I was at peace with it. But as time went on, number one, I had 2 years of surgery, and then I had to go through a workers' comp case. So 3 years of not being able to work, not being able to volunteer, not being able to go to the gym. I built one in my house, but still, my activities were limited, so I had no purpose. Yeah, I wanted to volunteer at the Guide Dog Foundation of America. I was told no. So as you said, I was getting these feelings, and I'm pretty self-aware, but I just could not figure out the origination of them. Looking back now, is a lot of stuff going on there, man. I was no longer this thing I was 30 years. I was no longer part of this thing I was for 30 years. No longer had that brotherhood and seeing the boys every day, kind of out of sight, out of mind, man, once you leave. And then I just disappeared. It wasn't like I had these, this long goodbye, retirement thing going on. Like I said, I had 2 surgeries and just kind of disappeared into the night, got medically retired. So when I put that together with realizing I had PTSD, another misconception I had, I always thought that PTSD was caused by seeing your brother or sister killed next to you. And mine was not. Mine was being involved in the most devastatingly intimate moments of so many people's lives, delivering that death notification, seeing their relative, their loved one dead right there on the floor, being in homicide scenes, like, as that person's walking up, if they weren't aware yet their life was about to change in the next few seconds as you delivered that news, or they became aware of what just happened. And to see that transformation, man, is powerful, and not in a positive way. And no one teaches us how to process that. They'll teach us how to get strong. They'll teach us how to fight. Will teach us how to become proficient at using weapons, basically making ourselves hard to kill. And you think you're fortifying yourself, and you are physically and even mentally, but to get over traumas that you see, there's no one there. Things are changing slowly. They're evolving. We're evolving as people, but no one shows you how to process all these things that you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I just spoke to, so I have a podcast, as you know, Another Cop's Mentality, and we brought on my buddy's cousin, who's a psychologist, and she said something that really resonated with me and my buddy Chris, who's also a cop. She said it's not our responsibilities to carry the burdens of others. And I go, holy shit, like that one just sat on my lap, and I was like, all right, let me just soak this in. It's not our responsibility to, carry other people's burdens. But the problem is that we do, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, we do carry that little girl or that guy or that lady or that animal or whatever, because we're human. So the human mind automatically tries to adapt to those things and say, well, that could have been you. That could have been your daughter. That could have been your son. That could have been this. So we start to build this guilt throughout time that we should have done or could have done something better, or whatever happens, which is why it's so difficult. And again, this is somebody who's retired, right, medically from the police department, somebody who's active, but I'm medically retired from the Marine Corps. And yes, you're right. Like, I don't consider myself to be the baddest guy in the room. I've never tried to be that guy. I sure as hell am hard to kill. I train jujitsu. I do other mixed martial arts. I hit the gym. I swim. I run. Whatever you want, I'll do it. But it was never because I was trying to be trainable to not get hurt or not get killed, And the problem is when I started seeing other guys around me, that I was like, man, that guy is a tough son of a bitch. And he's having difficult, like, times adapting to his mental health. And what does mental health look like? Nobody knows, because mental health looks different on everybody, and really what has affected me a lot. And again, I know we're going to get into some of the stuff with my injury, but my injury didn't really affect me much, believe it or not, physically or emotionally. I felt because I had the support of my family and because I was so young, like everything just kind of like, compartmentalized. I kind of shoved things without really noticing it. What really started affecting me was when we started having Leo suicides, or military suicides of the people that you kind of know. And then we just said it a minute ago, it's not our responsibility to carry other people's burdens. So I don't know if this is anything like you, maybe we're alike or not, but I go, oh my God, could that have been me? Could I do that? I'm feeling this. I'm anxious. All it is anxiety provoking you going, no, we can't do that. Oh, no, we can't go there. Or no, you can't carry a gun because what if that happens to you? Or what if I tell people how I'm feeling and I end up a CPAP myself? Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens. And when you go to therapy, which our department has a great psychologist, and, I have other sources that we've used in the military, you start to understand why these thoughts are happening. You understand what they are. I always use this analogy because it's crazy, but I go, raise your hand if you've ever been driving to the gym or to work or to something fun, and you're just like driving along, and all of a sudden you have a thought of like, what happens if I just turn the steering wheel? And people start laughing and they go, oh, I have had that. I'm like, That's called an unwanted intrusive thought. It means nothing. You don't have to pay it any mind. You don't have to focus on it. You don't have to overthink it. But what happens when you're a control freak? What happens
Yeah.
when you have, let's call it undiagnosed OCD, right? Maybe it's not OCD, but cops, military, paramedics, nurses, doctors, we're used to being in control. And when something like that happens and we're used to being in control and you're like, whoa, what was that thought? I don't like that. And you try to control it, it comes back with a vengeance. It gets stronger. You start losing sleep over it. You're like, all right, that happened. So I gotta focus and I gotta make sure it never happens again. But that's not how thoughts work. Thoughts, we have what, 60,000 thoughts, a day.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, like, why am I harping on these thoughts? Why am I like focusing on these things? And the more I did, the more I like it bothered me and it hurt me and controlled me. So once I said, you know what? I'm gonna let God take care of this. I'm gonna dive in the Bible. I'm gonna look at what intrusive thoughts are. I'm gonna look at what anxiety is. I'm gonna look at what depression is. I'm gonna look at what hardship is. And I was like, every single answer is in this book, right? And again, I can't always, it is not a responsibility of a Christian to change other people to be Christians. It is my responsibility to preach what I know in the gospel, right? So when I know that I'm having something wrong, I dive into that Bible, or I go to church, or ask a pastor, or ask somebody of faith. Now, fast forwarding, if you don't believe in faith, if you don't believe in God, if you don't have a higher being that you follow, then there's people like you and other people that are also using other means or other methods to bring peace and calm to that ripple effect in your mind. Because that's what's going on is people are having these things happen, but pharmaceutical companies are like, oh yeah, take anxiety meds, take depression
Yep.
meds, take this, take that. Listen, it's just like anything else. I soothe my anxiety with eating, and for a long time, I didn't even realize I was doing it. McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, White Castle, Snickers, soda, C4. That's all that was open when I was working midnights.
Yeah.
So now not only do you have a physical response to stress, you also have an emotional one and a mental one, and we haven't taught that for a long time. A lot of it's coming out now. Our job is doing a phenomenal job at teaching it. I've seen it, at the academy. We have
Right.
somebody who teaches mental health, I like to call him a mental health expert. He won't take that title, but he's got his master's, he's got his bachelor's, he's got thousands of hours of training, work with other departments, working with this, and does a phenomenal job. So when you have somebody go, hey, Mike, what if I told you those thoughts you're having? They're normal. A lot of people have those thoughts. There was a cop who works in the city and does the mental health stuff and goes, when are we going to start normalizing the fact that a lot of people have these weird, unwanted, intrusive thoughts about suicide, right? You could be the happiest person in the world and you have this thought, and now you're like resentment, and you feel like this, almost like this feeling of doom. You feel like you're such a horrible person, and how could I think like this? And it's like, dude, it's okay, but you have to be able to understand why these thoughts are happening. And when you do, is when you can start healing. And when you do, and you've done it for such a long time, then you're able to go, I got a little problem. It could be anxiety. It could be depression. It could be overthinking. It could be OCD. It could be ADHD. It could be whatever these people are putting these titles on people. But if
Yeah.
you ask me, a lot of the stuff is just human, human conditioning, as I like to call it. You just lost your dad. You should be able to grieve. You just
Yeah.
lost your wife, your husband. You should be able to grieve. What does grieving look like? It looks different to everybody. It looks different to everybody. And we try to put time lapses on things, and that's when we struggle. Because a lot of people go, yeah, it took me 6 months to shake it off. Okay, so here I am waiting 6 months to shake this off that you went through, but it's now a year. I'm like, I must be broken. Something
Yeah.
must be wrong with me. It's been a year. So I think that's when like the conversations start to help. These podcasts that you're doing, that I'm doing, that other people are doing. Why do people listen to 4-hour Joe Rogan podcast? Because they can relate.
Yeah.
Because you can listen to some. I was listening to one the other day about like rockets going into like the moon and this. And that. I'm like, why am I listening to this? It's like, well, number one, because it got me out of my own thought process. It got me to stop thinking about whatever the hell I was stressing about. Number one, number two, you're like, wow, mentally I must be growing because like 5 years ago I was not listening to this shit. And number three, you become open to other suggestions, right? That
Yep.
maybe your perspective isn't always the right thing. So dude, I know you're passionate about it. We could do this all day. I
Yeah.
get super stoked about hearing other people's opinions on all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was telling you, I drank ayahuasca for the first time this past March. My essence as a man changed, my soul, my perspective on myself, life, everything changed. And it's funny, my buddy Wiz Buckley's a former F-15 pilot. I started an organization called No Fallen Heroes. He's incredible what he does. And he's got a saying, he's like, if I was to hear myself talk 5 years ago, if I would hear the way I speak now, I'd punch myself in the face. And, people that know me, that hear what I'm espousing now and really just how I feel,
They're probably asking you,
are
okay,
blown
are you
away.
okay,
Like,
Mike?
who is this dude? Yeah, who
Exactly.
is this guy? And the bad thing, one not made bad, but as you kind of raise yourself to this higher consciousness, you lose some friends. They're not on the same wavelength anymore. Not that I'm anything better. It's just different. I'm different. And if they're, the same, they're staying where they are, we're just, kind of, there's a fork in the road and, nothing wrong with it. It happens. It's life. But, since I've kind of entered this community I'm in now, the caliber of people that I've met is incredible. And 99 of them are there for the most noble purpose, which is to help others. And it's so refreshing coming from a 30-year police career where everyone lies to you and has ulterior motives to now be speaking to people that are trying to help you and want to put you on the road to redemption and healing and anything they can do when they hear what you're doing. Like, if you need anything, hit me up. It's just mind-boggling to see. Like, man, how did I get so lucky to meet him, her? Like, it's incredible. And now, I get to have a podcast and interview like guys like yourself who, again, as I spoke to you before, someone's life is going to be changed hearing your story today. And to me, that's the most powerful thing. All I would do is, as Wiz Buckley says, put the ladder down, help people up it, and pay it forward. So,
It's humbling
it's
experience.
incredible.
It's
It
definitely
really
humbling.
is.
It's humbling experience because the openness and the vulnerability that you're exposing to the world is now, because I know you, I've met you, we used to work out at the same gym, and the first time I saw you, I was like, that's one big son of a bitch. I look at the tattoos and I see how big you are and the way you carry yourself. Most people are like, that guy's good, he's got no problems, he doesn't need anybody, and it's quite opposite. Typically the people who are in our profession, I'm not saying need help, but just need guidance,
Yeah.
on how to respond and how to sit with the stuff that you respond to. And
Yeah.
I realize that sometimes like my audience, maybe they're not ready for this talk. Maybe they're not ready or prepared to have this conversation. Maybe they haven't walked the path that you've walked, or maybe some of the path that I've walked, and they're not ready for it. But you are now setting up a resource for them to reach later on in life when they know they're going through something. I always said the same thing. I'm 36 years old almost, and I'm still young. I'm young,
Yeah.
36, but I've been through a lot in my life, especially
Hell
in my
yeah.
young adult life, especially with my injury. And then you see like kids who are coming into the academy and they're almost 20 years younger than you. And you're like, maybe I'm not so young anymore, And it's like when I was 20 years old, 21, what was I doing? Well, a lot more different stuff than most typical 20-year-olds. When I was 20, I was walking the streets of Afghanistan. I was strapped to a freaking machine gun. I had rounds in my backpack. I was watching my buddies get blown up by bombs and die. Like, that stuff is very traumatic. And I just think that I was doing a disservice to myself, and I was doing a disservice to others by everybody going, how do you do it? How are you so good? How do you seem so happy? I'm like, I don't know. I must be gifted. I don't know. No,
Yeah.
the reality is like I've had some fucking tough days, but there's been days that didn't really feel tough because of the support system that I had, because of the ability to talk to people and to tell people what's on my mind rather than holding it up here. When I hold that shit in is when it eats me alive. When I like sit there and go, no, everything's fine, everything's great. I'm sorry. Like, if you've seen the shit that you've seen and some of the shit that I've seen, you need somebody to let that shit out. I don't know.
Absolutely.
Maybe you disagree. I don't know. You tell me.
I agree with you 100%. I think the problem with guys like us is we need someone like us to vent to speak to tell us that it's okay. I actually recorded a podcast last week with Zach Ferguson, a former Navy SEAL. And during the course of that podcast, Zach got emotional. And in a separate part, I got emotional. And brother, before my healing journey, I never would have been able to feel that, number one. Number two, I would have been so embarrassed about crying, it would be ridiculous. But as I said, I did reel about it. Zach and I don't give a fuck. Actually, after it was done, I said, Zach, that was beautiful. Someone, women are much more in touch with their emotions than men, so I'm kind of guiding us towards men. But some man is going to see this and realize, like I did seeing Eddie Penny, that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
This is a hardened warrior that's doing this. And it's funny to go back to your point where you said you saw me in the gym and you thought I was okay because, I have size or whatever. I remember during one of my ayahuasca journeys, the universe telling me, I made you like this. I made you go to the gym all those years. I'm like 6'2", 240. I still look in the mirror. I have body dysmorphia. I think I'm small as could be. But I was having a talk with DJ Shipley this past April. I went to training with his GBRS group. And I said, DJ, I told him the space I was in. He and I both had our individual healing journeys. I was ayahuasca. He was ibogaine. And we really got deep into how we were as men, and we were not happy with ourselves and what was going on. And I said, do you have any words of wisdom now as I kind of embark on this new thing that I'm doing, going to help these men and women? He goes, dude, you get on that stage, get vulnerable with these guys and girls. They see you cry, seeing the way you look with the tats and the size. They're going to fucking listen to every word you have to say. He's like, you're not just talking to talk, man. You walk the fucking walk. So you walk in there with credibility, and they're going to see you do that. He's like, just be you, bro. I was like, fair enough, brother. And that's exactly what I plan on doing, like yourself. So, listen, this conversation is flowing so well, but let me backtrack to just kind of tell us about you as a child growing up, immigrating to the U.S., kind of tell us what your childhood was like. Just want the audience to get you a little more.
No, absolutely, man. So for me, we moved to the United States when I was like 7, 8 years old. And the whole Marine Corps mentality thing was, I was a young kid and we were living in Atlanta, Georgia, because my mom's brother lived there. So that's why they moved to the United States, in pursuit of the American dream, to be able to go to school and have a job and not get, mugged in the street. Like a lot of these countries are difficult right now, and
Oh, yeah.
my parents just wanted something better for us. And I remember going to the 1996 Centennial Olympics, and there was a guy in uniform and he was decked out. And to me, he looked like a cop, but now I know he was a Marine. And I looked at my dad and I go, hey, Dad, what does that cop do? And he goes, well, he's not a cop. My dad loves history. So he's like, no, he's a Marine. I goes, what do Marines do? He goes, Marines protect us from the bad people. Best way you could describe it to a 7, 8-year-old,
Absolutely.
So I was like, oh, man, that's what I want to do. So that guy's image in my head never really left. I always wanted to be like that guy in the uniform with the medals. And, you don't realize what they did to earn those medals until you're older and you're in the service. But now, living in Atlanta, Georgia, 9/11 didn't impact me the way it severely impacted people like you that had family here, that, you saw how these things affected the state itself, how it impacted the people you worked with and your family, and how it was just never the same. People going into the city, people traveling, everybody was on edge, everybody was anxious, everybody was nervous of what may happen again. So I just thought, you know what? I remember this guy in uniform. I know the war's kicking off. I said, that's what I want to do. And I remember telling my parents, like, I'm going to do that. And my mom's like, no, like, mijito, I don't want you going there. I don't want you to get hurt. And that's Mom,
Oh, yeah.
I graduated high school. All my teachers were like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go to college? I'm like, going to the Marine Corps, okay? So I was, like, set. I signed the papers. I took the test. And at the time, because of 9/11, a lot of people were enlisting. So when I went in 03 open, which is basically infantry open. You could be a mortarman, assaultman, machine gunner, whatever they assign you. So
Okay.
I graduated boot camp, and I get assigned to Charlie Company as a open infantryman. And then at some point, I was a $160, like 161, 160. I was not a big guy ever,
Yep.
at the time.
Well,
And
you
they're
are
like,
now.
well, I'm bigger now for sure.
Yeah.
And they go, Ferreira, 0331. I was like, yes, sir. I was like, what the hell's 0331? They're like, machine gunner. I was like, all right, cool, shit. I know that. I mean, I've seen some of these on, Call of Duty and stuff. Sure, I'll shoot off some machine guns. And, so you're doing the workup and you graduate the school and you think you're this badass already. And you're like, walking around with a little salt on your shoulders. And then you get assigned to your unit. And I get there and I'm like, you guys must not know I'm a Marine, like, yeah, so are we, get in line kind of thing,
Exactly.
My senior guys had just gotten back from Iraq, and they told us that in like a couple months we're going to be deploying to Afghanistan. And I go, how the hell are we deploying to Afghanistan? I haven't even learned a damn thing. I just know that I'm a machine gunner and whatever. So now this is 2009, 2010. We're doing our workup, and we went to CAX, which is in California, where we do like live scenario, live shoot, helicopters, bombs, machine guns, like the whole deal. And they're getting you prepared to do this. So September 2010 comes around, and I remember getting deployed to Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and I'm walking down the streets of Afghanistan. I look at my buddy Ashi, and I'm like, dude, all I can think about is being deployed when all this nonsense happened. And here, like 9, 10 years later, we're walking in the streets of Afghanistan, like looking for Taliban and looking for bombs. Like, how surreal is this?
Yeah.
I don't think we knew the severity of what we'd gotten ourselves into. We're just there. We're kind of excited and finally able to do whatever. We're, piss and vinegar. We're all in our early 20s. And, we get to our base and nothing's going on. Everything's good. And throughout the time while we're there, you know, we're like, well, it's not so bad here. We got mail call. So our parents, our loved ones are selling us Red Bull and cigarettes and socks and anything that you could need. You're building some kind of camaraderie with the people you're there with. And then unfortunately, because when I was there, it was kind of hot, pretty damn hot. It's like 130 degrees, dry weather.
Wow.
You get used to it. Your body adapts. It's dry heat, And
Yeah.
we take our first casualty, Doc Gonzo. He was our corpsman. That one hit pretty hard because Doc was there to help people.
Yep.
Doc had a rifle. So Doc would act as a rifleman had he needed it. But essentially was there to help us, to heal us, to take care of, his Marines. And he steps on a bomb, and ends up dying from the injuries of that. And then we just kind of like looked at each other like, is this real?
Yeah.
And then we took another casualty. And a couple days later, we took another casualty. And another day, we took another, DOA, and another DOA, another DOA. And we're like, all right, what the fuck's going on? Like, it's time to go home. Like, it ain't only been a couple months. So now my birthday, your birthday, Jesus' birthday, everything's passing by. And you're like counting down the days so when you get to go home. And
how long are your deployments?
the Marine Corps, we usually do 7 months unless we get extended. The Army usually does a year. They do a little bit of RR in the middle, and then they go back, which I feel like it's even worse because you're doing 6 months. You come home, and then you got to go back there again. It's like, what the hell? But, we're a little over halfway our deployment, and now we're getting into January, which is the new year, and we're only supposed to be like another month or two, and so we're like really getting excited. And they go, all right, well, we're going to be doing a push, right? We're going to be moving from A to B because A is no longer a threat. B is becoming, a hot combat zone. And the other unit that was there was becoming combat ineffective because they took so many casualties that they can't even, do what they're supposed to do. So now we leave from this place that we're at, which is a forward operating base. It's kind of where we ran all of our operations out of. And we're doing this whole push to a new compound where supposedly Taliban were operating and enlaced in IEDs. So we go into this compound, boom, doors get kicked in. The guys are walking around, clear, clear, clear. Everything's good to go. And I have, a machine gun team, and we're tasked to go up on the roof and do some overwatch.
Okay.
So now it's, like 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. We're putting up machine guns on the roof. Everything's getting settled in for the night. I remember telling my guys, I'm like, hey, stay put. I'll be right back. I'm going to go get the rest of the equipment, and then we'll lay down for the night. Tomorrow we're going to be pushing out of here. So like, all right, good to go. I remember going, all right, I'll be back. I grabbed the top of the bunk. I jumped off this little roof, which is 8-foot roof. And all of a sudden, bam, I'm on my back. And it felt like I got hit by a fucking bus. I couldn't hear anything. My ears are ringing. All I see is flickering little lights because it was nighttime. And all I hear, muffled, don't move, look for secondaries. What they were doing is they were putting IEDs down in the ground. They were wiring another one so that when you stepped on it, the person coming to get you steps on that one too. These assholes are smart. They're not stupid. They've been fighting the Russians. They've been fighting other people for centuries.
Yep.
So now my corpsman disobeys those orders. He comes up. He starts working me up. And he's like, you okay? You're going to be all right. And he starts talking about this gentleman's club that we hated. It was disgusting back in Jacksonville, North Carolina. And I'm like, why is he talking about this in Bud Light? And what kind of beer do you like? He was trying to get my mind off of what was going on.
Absolutely.
But all I can feel is like this intense pain in my pelvic region. I had broke my pelvis and shattered my femur from the fall, and both legs were amputated due to the IED going off. What they did is they would use pressure cookers. They'd pack them with nails, glass, explosive device, and they would close it shut. So when the bomb goes off, it creates, fragments.
Yep.
And I mean, this thing was, amputating arms, legs, everything you could think of. It was pretty horrible. I was very fortunate because I stepped on a 20-pound IED, and there was people that stepped on a 10 and lost their life, lost their arms, their legs, their eyes, their ears, all sorts of shit. But by the grace of
Yeah.
God, I've stepped on this 20-pound bomb, and because it had rained a couple days before, it was dug down a little deeper. So the
Okay.
impact was embraced a little bit by the ground. So talk about, saving grace. So
Yeah.
now all I hear is Bravo Mike Fox 7229, or they're reading out a 9-line medevac, to get me in. And I'm like, why the hell are they reading a 9-line medevac? And I just see, boom, he gives me morphine in the right leg. Boom, morphine in the left leg. And I'm starting to feel good. I'm like, all right, well, whatever the hell happened wasn't probably as bad as I'm thinking, But I look
Exactly.
down, I see blood. I just see everybody's faces. Everybody's freaking out. And I hear the helicopter coming in. And they're getting me up on the stretcher, on the we call it the litter.
Yep.
And they put me on the litter, and all of a sudden they picked me up, and it felt like I was being marched in a casket while being alive. I hear all their commentary. I hear he's gonna be all right, he's gonna be okay, da da da, tourniquet this and that, and stop the bleeding here, and yada yada yada. As they carry me to the helicopter, and the helicopter's and I'm like, all right, what the hell happened? I just assumed I stepped on a bomb because that's what was happening with other people. So this is the best part. I get ready to get put onto the helicopter, and I see like hallucinating a little bit. I see like these two green eyes, and I'm like, it's aliens, it's got to be aliens.
Yeah.
What happened was the morphine and everything was starting to kick in, and I was starting to go in and out because of the blood loss. And this guy goes, all right, you're going to be all right, soldier. We got you. We're going to go from here. And I remember going, I'm not a soldier. I'm a fucking Marine, because we have this like friendly, bashing of who's better and who's tougher
Yep.
and whatever else. Obviously, all love. So these guys all started giggling. They throw the thumbs up. I throw my thumbs up, and bam, I go out. And now they're transporting me from this place in the middle of the freaking desert to a local hospital in Bagram, which is a small, like localized hospital. Stop the
Okay.
bleeding, emergency surgery, whatever. And then they would send you to launch to Germany, where they would begin, all the surgery.
Right. So you're essentially now out for quite a while, I'm assuming, right? You get put in a helicopter and you just get into surgery, and how long is it before you kind of come out of surgery to where you're lucid and you can kind of figure out what's going on after, I'm assuming the doctors tell you, and how does that all happen?
So by the time I got in Germany, so I went to Bagram, and I was out there. So I remember going through there. I was cold. I was freezing cold. My body was going into shock. So they ripped all my clothes off at nighttime because I told you it's 130. It's like 90, but it feels like it's 20 because of the heat difference, So
Okay.
I remember being really cold, and they were like, all right, we're going to put a blanket over you. And they put a blanket on me. And once I felt some kind of comfort, I just, boom, I knocked out again. And then I don't remember much from Bagram to launch tool. But when I woke up at launch tool, I remember them giving us the debrief, like, hey, if you get hurt, you're going to go to launch tool Germany. At the time, I couldn't remember launch tool, so I just tell the nurse, she goes, do you know where you're at? I'm like, I'm in Landu, Germany. And she's kind of laughing, She's like, yeah, you're right. You're in Germany. I go, okay. They go, all right, well, you're becoming stabilized. We're going to get you onto a bird, and get you into a plane and send you back home. And I go, great. Thank God, So they ended up putting us in his C-17 or C-130, whatever it was, and then essentially flying us back home. And I remember kind of like sitting there, and you just hear the noise of the turbines, the engines. And I remember like kind of looking around, and I saw a sniper that had gotten blown up with me, that was in my unit. And I'm like, all right, he's here, and he's there. And my medic he's like, you okay? I'm like, I want water because we can't really give you water right now. He's like, so he snuck over like, it's crazy how the mind remembers certain things,
Yeah, absolutely.
He brings me like this little Jello, and he's like, just suck on this. So he puts a little Jello in my lip, and so I start like sucking the juice, the water out of it, and it's helping me out a little because I had such bad cotton mouth from all the medications and all the stuff
Okay.
they were giving me. So the hardest part I think was I get home and they get me off the bird and off the plane, and now you have all these high high profile personnel, colonels, chiefs, majors, all kind of there. Welcome each branch home, like, hey, Marine, you're home. Hey, soldier. And for us to see our own people is like such a relief. I'm like, a full board colonel is here to get me. We're good. I'm
Yeah.
safe. I'm safe. And it was like one of those moments that you've probably seen pictures where they have the flags draped over the coffins. I felt like that was me, but not in the coffin. It was such a scary feeling, because they're like, all right, 1, 2, 3, lift. Boom, they lift. 1, 2, 3, step. And now they're all stepping in formation. Everything's professional. Everything's like, just the way you see in the movies. And they're taking you out of this thing and putting you into ambulance, taking you over to the hospital. So I remember I'd lost so much weight because of, lack of food, lack of water, lack of sleep, stress. I just buzzed my head. I was so dark from the explosion and all the debris and all the other stuff that I remember like being on the bed and getting wheeled in, and my mom is passing by, and I'm like trying to reach for her, and she couldn't even recognize me, and I
Really?
was like, and it was hard, it was hard to kind of like feel the stuff. Um, Now I'm just kind of standing by, like waiting, and my mom runs back, she grabs my hand, and from that moment it was like I'm home. Like I felt like, wow, I'm home. And from that day on, it was just it's a journey. It's been a journey the whole time.
So, you awakened to. Were you aware of what had happened to your legs at that point, or you're still
I'm
not
still
too?
I'm still not sure. I
Right.
feel pain. I'm able to look down, but I'm not really aware. Like I think I'm pretty sure at that time I was like, all right, I'm missing my legs, but it's okay. I'm alive. That's kind
Right.
of what I remember doing. Um, and that's where I started to kind of come off the meds, come back to start having conversations. Do you remember what happened? They're like, checking to see if you had a traumatic brain injury. I'm very fortunate I didn't. Um, but you start becoming aware of everything going on and where you're at. You know,
And who delivers that news to you that you lost both legs below the knees?
the doctors, your doctors and your parents, and my mom. I remember my mom and dad being there, and they kind of helped take some of the blow off. Because they were like comforting and whatever else. You're like, all right, well, guess my life's ruined. That's kind of like your initial thought. I've never even met an amputee. I never met somebody who lost an arm or a leg or whatever. So this is all brand new to me.
Okay. So, how long are you now? This is Walter Reed at this
Walter Reed,
point?
yeah,
Okay.
Walter Reed in DC, and then essentially that closed and became Bethesda in Maryland.
Okay. So, essentially, you're at this facility or facilities for what, about a year and a half?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
So, as you're progressing during your treatments, what are you going through mentally? Like, I want to really show the men and women who are going through it now, whatever they're going through. I want to kind of show what you went through and the fact that you feel from this, but I want to kind of have them feel what you're feeling at this point. Progression from essentially day one. What's going on in your mind? Because I can't imagine being in your position.
I think the most important thing that I've realized throughout the years is acknowledging the fact that you don't necessarily ever quite heal 100%. You do hold on to some of those things. At the time, I was kind of holding a little bit of resentment because 22 years old, I'm in a wheelchair, I have no legs, broke my pelvis, shattered my femur. My mom and dad are wiping my ass all over again, helping me shave. I'm in a hospital bed and I can't see the light. All I see is negativity, like negativity. And you get into this negative self talk, which again, I didn't even learn about that till recently. When you start doing, you're like, what the fuck is wrong with me? When you start telling people what you're feeling, and people are like, oh, that's negative self talk. It happens when you don't put a stop to it or when you
Yeah.
acknowledge it, yada, yada, yada. So at the time, I was like, I'm never going to walk again. I'm never going to get laid. I'm never going to drive. I'm never going to be able to play sports. I'm never going to do it. I'm 22. This is obviously 22-year-old Matias.
Yeah.
So these are all things that I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, I guess this is it. I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. And the power that comes from the stuff that we're doing right now was pretty much what got me out of that rut. I was laying in my bed one day, and this kid named Josh Weggy shows up to my room. Obviously, I'll describe him how I know him then and how I know him now.
Okay.
Wearing a USMC shirt, wearing blue jeans. Do you remember those old GBX boots? They were like super heavy.
Yeah.
Like they almost like construction boots almost. This
Yep.
kid walks in, looks kind of like Ed Sheeran, red hair, whatever. And he's like,
Change your
hey,
mind.
I'm Josh. I'm Josh Weggy. McKay, how you doing, Josh? At this point, you have so many visitors and people trying to lift your spirits. So you're like, not another fucking guest, you know?
A
You got
cheerleader.
you got a president, you got cheerleaders, you got teams, you got congresswomen, men, politicians, athletes. Like, just it's a lot. You know, it's
Yeah.
overwhelming. It's overstimulating, to be honest with you. But it was great that they were doing these things. So now this kid Josh starts talking about a fucking softball team, and I go, Josh, I don't know if you realize this, but I got no fucking legs. You know, I don't know if you're. He's like, oh, I always forget this part, you know. And he lifts up his fucking pant leg, and the asshole had prosthetics on. And I'm like, my eyes are like this. I'm like, why didn't you say something?
You couldn't have led with that, Josh.
I had a million questions for Josh.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
like,
sure.
do you drive? Do you run? Are you still a Marine? Do you have a girlfriend? Are you able to go out to the bars? How long did it take you to get out of the hospital? Like, these are things that, like, really, I don't know what it feels like to be fully depressed from my understanding of people that have gone through it. I was definitely sad. I was definitely
Yeah.
down. I was definitely beating myself up. But I never really got down to the point where I was like, my life is over. It was like, my life is ruined. I'm not going to be the same guy. I'm not going to be fast. I'm not going to be doing all these things. That was kind of like my negative outlook. And then Josh comes in the room and opens up like this freaking flood lamp that was like so much positivity, you know? And I go,
Yep.
you mean to tell me, Josh, come here. You mean to tell me you're playing sports with those things, with those metal legs? Because I didn't know that how to say prosthetics at the time. Those metal legs, you're doing stuff? He goes, dude, I run, I do marathons, I play basketball, I drive a pickup truck, I do this, I do that, I'm in college. I'm like, are you kidding me? And you're able to do all this stuff? I was like, how long did it take you to do that? Like, you know, like, does your mom have to wipe your ass? Because that's what's happening right now, you know? And Josh is kind of like giggling and telling me, yes, dude, all this stuff is possible. This is going to be great. You know, your life is going to be great. Don't put yourself down. And it was hard because now I'm telling you this, you know, 13 years later.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, all right, like I was a little skeptical. I was like, you sure? You sure everything's going to be okay? And then I see him doing this stuff. They call it the MATSI, the Military Advanced Training Center. Is where we did our PT, OT, and you got people running in the blades, the running legs. You got
Okay.
people doing like toe taps. It's like almost like you're doing some kind of training camp to go play football. I was like,
Right.
this is awesome, you know. So at that point, it's when I started to feel like, wow, somebody else is doing it. That means I can do it, you know. And it was a little bit of like hope that got re-sparked once I started seeing that stuff.
Oh, I can imagine. You know, there's nothing like seeing someone else that's gone through or is going through exactly what you're going through, especially another soldier. You know, it's a little bit different if it's a civilian, but this is essentially your brother, and he's showing you what he's gone through and showing you the light. And yeah, it's going to be tough to get there. There's work to do, but at the end of that road, you can see that light at the end of that tunnel, and it's got to be inspirational for you. I can't imagine, seeing that and knowing that. Nah, man, my life is not over.
I
It's
felt like
different.
Hercules.
It's going to be different, but it's not over.
I felt like Hercules, you know. I felt like I could do this, I could do that. And there was times where, when I first started walking, people don't realize shit hurts. You know, walking for the first time after not walking for 6 months and having a broken pelvis and a femur and healing from that, and the pain that comes from wearing the prosthetics, I deal with that every day. I still deal with it. I've learned how to cope with it now, so it's different. But you get open wounds, you get infections, bacteria builds up in your legs. They get really hot and sweaty. The friction creates, pimples and cysts and open wounds all the time. Like, it just comes with the territory, like with wearing prosthetics. But with that being said, you learn how to recognize, I'm having a bad leg day.
Right.
I'm having a bad mental health day. It's not always going to be like this. It's going to get better. But the
Yep.
problem is that because, again, we have that control issue, right? As cops, military, whatever. I want now. I want to get better now. And which is why a lot of people revert to, including myself, for a long time, I was on the medication and stuff, for pain or anxiety or whatever. And you want this pill or medication to heal everything and change everything and make things be perfect. But what the fuck is perfect?
Yeah.
Only you know what peace is, and peace to me is when I'm not feeling jittery, when I'm not, overthinking stuff, when I'm not worried about stuff, when I'm not, creating these scenarios in my head, and there's not a medication or pill that's going to do that to you. So we're
No.
almost selling like false hope to people by giving medication to go, this is the only way. I don't shit on medication. I don't by any means. I think that it helps a lot of people, but we should try a couple of things before we devote to a temporary fix because you got to take the medication every day for it to essentially work.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, how about we try, again, I named a few earlier, meditation, yoga, working out, healthier lifestyle with food benefits, going on retreats, surround yourself with loved ones, talking to people who've gone through this and can honestly, vulnerable, and being genuine tell you it's not easy. It's not easy, man. Some days you're going to cry. Some days you're going to want to roll up in a ball. Some days you're going to want to put on a blanket. Some days you're not going to want to leave. That's okay. But at some point, we got to get going.
Yeah.
All right? We got to get better.
It sounds like you essentially go through the 5 stages of grief. You lost your legs. So maybe it wasn't a person or a loved one, but you loved your legs and you loved that life that you had that now is going to evolve into something different. So, I sense you have to accept it, and eventually, and, again, it's, there's got to be a grieving process there for what you lost and what you're no longer, although in no way, shape, or form are you limited, as we see in what you've done. But, I can imagine, I can't imagine, and let me not say that because I've never been in that position. But your mental strength, to be honest with you, I was expecting you to tell me that you were depressed for months. You're sitting in bed, you didn't see a positive outcome, but something kicking you in the ass. But you were far from that. You started off essentially from day one with a much different attitude than I would have expected, to be honest with you.
Mike, I got to tell you, a lot of the mental stuff came now, not then. Which is why I think it's important for us to talk about this stuff because a lot of people go, hey, I'm a cop. Yeah, I saw suicides. Yeah, I saw homicides. Yeah, I saw a baby. Yeah, I saw a burning person. Yeah, I saw a burning car. It doesn't affect me. I'm good. I could deal with it. And then 10, 15, 20 years later, you're like, why the fuck am I thinking about this right now? And that's why it's so important to talk about healing because healing is a lifelong journey. It's not, well, I healed 6 months ago. December, I was perfect. Every single day is going to be a process of that healing. You might be great today and tomorrow you're like, why am I feeling like this? And every time we do that, every time we go, what's wrong with me? Why today? Why now? Why am I experiencing this? You're just limiting yourself to your healing. The healing process, again, is a lifelong journey. We're constantly losing loved ones. We're constantly experiencing trauma. With social media and the media, we see it every day. That's secondary trauma, So I open up social media and it's suicide this. Cop was killed in the line of duty. Overdosed this. Car accident happened two blocks down. Like, you start feeling some anxiety before we get out of bed. We're like, open up our phone. It's the first thing we do. So the reason why you didn't get that
it's the worst thing you do to open up your phone when you first wake up.
That's the first thing people will tell you.
Yep.
So that's why the answer that I gave you was different, is because those are false expectations. People think that when trauma happens immediately, you're going to go through the 5 stages of grief, right? And we talk about anger. We talk about depression. We talk about guilt. We talk about all these different things that aren't necessarily going to happen right now. Some people are numb. Some people are in shock. They don't even realize what the hell happened. Because that's what the mind does. It's amazing. The mind will shut the emotions down for it to be able to heal. But eventually, at some point, your body's like, hey, you remember this? You remember that? And that's when you got to go, holy shit. So that's why it's a different answer, because it's an honest answer. I thought that everything was fine then, which I guess it was. But subconsciously, it starts like storing shit in your brain. And I love this. And I'm going to give him props because I didn't come up with this. The president for Rolling Thunder chapter, Billy Byron, one of the biggest law enforcement and veteran supporters I've ever met in my life, said that our brain, our mind, is like a Rolodex. Now, if you're young, which I'm young, but I was still around for Rolodex and the rotary phones and the new cell phones and technology, pressing the same button 15 times to get a letter. When you want to send
Yeah.
text, I was around for that stuff. He said it's like a Rolodex. A Rolodex, as you know, is something that you do like this, and it's got little flashcards with recipes, with phone numbers, with emails, addresses, whatever you use it for. Your brain's going to go, you smell something, it goes, 2007, you smelled that at the store. You remember that? And it comes
Yep.
up. And it might be a beautiful, nostalgic memory. It might be, that smell of pine. It reminds me of the Christmas tree my mom and dad put up, 16 years ago. Or you might smell something and it goes, oh my God, that was the house I walked into. I remember the kid was overdosed. He was wearing blue jeans. He died twice. And then you start like freaking out. And you're like, hey, you can do it, but it's going to hurt you to always look and focus and overanalyze the negative things, but not the positive things. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So that's when I was like, holy shit, thoughts are just thoughts. And it's like being on a train and you're looking out the window and the scenery's changing. These thoughts are going to come and go. Like the clouds, I'm sure you got your own analogy. And when you start learning these things, it doesn't get better immediately, but things start to help. You start to feel like, okay, I don't need to be in control of everything. Your body's done it for now, however old you are and how old I am.
Yeah, I'm 56. Yep.
56 years old. Your body's been doing great for 56 years, which is why I talk about panic attacks and anxiety to people, especially recruits, because I go, if you've never felt a panic attack before, it feels like your chest is being crushed. And you're going to think you're having a heart attack. And you're going to go to the emergency room. And you're going to go to urgent care. And I'm going to ask you one question. Mike, have you ever had a heart attack?
Nope.
How the fuck do you know you're having a heart attack then?
Yeah.
No, because my chest is hurting because it feels tight, and that's what Google says. Well, there you go. Dr. Google just told you have cancer and you're dying in a week. Like, you know what I'm saying? So these are the things that we got to do a better job at teaching, talking about, and exposing that will make us better and help us grow.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, and I always say this, number one, your thoughts create your reality. So why is it that negative voice inside the head is so loud, but that positive one is almost like a fucking whisper, man? When you should invert it. The positivity should be what you scream in your head, and leave that negative shit to the whisper and kick it out as soon as it creeps into your head. I just had I told you I was in an ayahuasca retreat. We do integration at the end of the ceremony, which is essentially where you sit around and talk about what brought you there, how your experience was, and what you want to do going forward. And in terms of this podcast, there was a guy named Scott, and Scott is brilliant. I'm talking on the level of Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting brilliant, not just smart or intelligent. So I'm listening to Scott talk. And as he's talking, I'm like, man, what business do I have doing a podcast? I cannot provide any of this deep, insightful philosophy and thoughts that Scott could provide. I'm incapable of it. And then I'm like, nah, bro, don't say that shit. Scott's got his gifts. So do you. One of them being the biggest one right now in this space is being willing to get vulnerable and show men and women that, feeling emotion is actually a sign of strength, and you're willing to show them how low you've been in life. And I put that aside, and I'm like, you have to stop doing it. And listen, doubts creep in your mind. You have that, imposter syndrome creeps into your mind. It's another normal thing. But just kick that shit out as soon as it gets in there, man.
Yeah.
And, as far as going through experiences, what I tell people is, and a mentor of mine, George Faraday, he's the guy who taught me how to fight. I love his kid. I was kind of telling him what was going on. It's a family drama a few months ago. And he's like, Morgs, never look at yourself as a victim. He's like, you're a warrior. So if you're a warrior, you're a warrior. You cannot be a warrior and a victim. Your mind will never reconcile it. So flip the script, man, and empower yourself. Thank the universe for every single thing it puts you through. No matter how visceral that pain is, no matter how devastating, you must feel it. You must heal from it. You can't push it away. You can't use substances to dull it. Once you heal, man, you're going to be stronger, more resilient. You're going to be healthy. You could go forth and help people. Your relationships are going to be healthy relationships. You're not going to be looking for other people for your happiness. And man, not that I lived differently or much differently, but I literally, anything that's happening, my mom passed after that. And I literally look at every single thing that happens to me as a thank you. I'll fucking get through that. I'll get through that. I'll get through that. You know, you're not, as Rocky Balboa always said, in most of us are still in Rocky Balboa always telling his son that beautiful speech. He's like, nothing hits harder than life, man. I don't care how big you are, how rich you are, how good looking you are, how funny you are. It doesn't matter. We're all taking those punches on the fucking chin.
Yeah.
And you know what? The only difference between a victor and a loser is the victor got up one more time. That's it. He never quit. So I don't care if it's fucking baby steps you're taking, man. Take the fucking steps forward. Get up off the ground and just keep moving. You only lose when you quit. And your example is perfect story of perseverance and resilience, brother. I mean, I love it.
I really appreciate it, man. It's
I hate that you had to go through that, but well, listen. One question I had, I remember when you first got on, I always thought that, or I was under the impression, falsely, as I say, that amputees could not drive because I thought those fine motor skills that you need to drive would kind of preclude you from doing so when you have prosthetics. Like, how does that work?
It honestly, I drive the same way I drove when I had feet. When you're below the knee, you can still feel, you still have sensitivity. The pedal work is just the exact same. There are a lot of people that obviously are not law enforcement that use hand controls, cranks, whatever to operate the gas and the brake. If you're an above the knee amputee, it's a little more difficult because your knee depends on friction and strength. Like when you step on the heel and the toe, it causes the knee to bend. For me, I still have my knees, so I'm still able to pick up my knee and move the pedal from right to left, left to right with no problem. I can still feel sensation when I'm pushing the gas and when I'm braking.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Yeah, again, I was always falsely under the impression that it was not you were not capable of doing so, but that's awesome.
If you pull people over who fall under the Disability Act,
Yep.
American Disabilities Act, and you see the kind of technology in some people's cars, you'd be like, you have no idea who's driving next to you with no arms and legs. There's,
Yeah.
and I know this because I have friends that drive that are missing both arms and both legs, and they have hand controls, they have buttons, they have these columns. It's incredible what technology's done.
Yeah, I have pulled over people with disabilities to see the equipment in the car. I'm like, damn, man, that's impressive.
It's crazy.
But yeah, it really is. And of course, they're getting a warning, and that's it. There's no way. If you assholes ever write a ticket to someone who's using equipment like that, shame on you, number one. But so yeah, so now as you're coming to the end of your hospital stay, how is your mental state? Are you in great spirits?
At that point, I'm in good spirits, because at that point I was already walking, I was jogging, I was running, and really some of the prerequisites of getting out of the medical care was to complete the Navy 5-miler, the Army 10-miler. So here I am running around in these blades, going, "Holy shit, I'm doing it! I could do it! I'm good!" And I think like anybody else, I love completing tasks, and I love feeling fulfilled when I can do something that I've never done before. So a lot of this stuff was like, amazing for me. It was great.
Oh, I can imagine. Actually, I meant to ask you. I was going over your citations. How does a Marine get a Navy unit citation? How does that work? I'm not familiar with the award system.
So depending on what your unit's doing, Navy use citations are issued through the Department of the Navy for fulfilling some mission or doing something for whatever reason. When we were in Afghanistan, doing certain operations fell under that chief of staff or whatever. So
Okay.
they decide this is what you get. But yeah, unless you're doing some specific thing, that's when you earn certain awards. Like a combat action ribbon, it's like requirement to be in a firefight or whatnot. Purple Heart is if you're killed in the line of duty or you're severely wounded in a line of duty in a combat zone. They just come up with their own purposes of issuing out the award.
Gotcha. Okay, so now as you're getting set to now, we're in what 20? Are we ending like middle of 2011, going to 2012 now? Where you're about to get released?
We're getting 2012. Yeah, I got out in 2012.
So now, what are your plans as you're getting released? Do you have any plans at this point, or you're not sure what you're going to do?
Going back to college, playing on that softball team that Josh Wegge had talked about.
Yeah.
Trying to relive some of those months and years that I missed out on, while rehabilitating and whatnot.
And you're living where once you leave the hospital?
At that time, I was living in Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to school. Yeah, I was going to school there, and then I moved to Florida to go to school and be a little closer to home. Being raised in Georgia, my family was only a couple hours from there. I was going to college. I had a good group of guys that I was, Marines buddies with. So, we were just going to college and living life.
Nice. It's so funny that you and I were so close to each other. I was an Atlanta police officer from 93 to '03. And um, my motorcycle squad, I went to the motorcycle squad in 98. Were you aware of where the Atlanta Police Academy was off Central Avenue?
I know where the academy is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was where my precinct was. We were right next to the
Okay.
academy. So, bro, I don't know, not many miles away from you. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, my boy Joe Franklin, he and I went to the academy together. We're still friends 31 years later. Grew up in Marlboro, as I used to raise. He's got like the craziest southern accent. So he went to Marlboro High School. He was an Army guy himself.
That is so
it's just,
funny.
brother, it is a small freaking world. So
It
we were
is.
down so close to each other in Georgia, and then back to Suffolk County here, as we'll see shortly. But so do you finish school in Florida?
So I was going to school in Florida, and my daughter was getting ready to be born, and her mom lived here in Long Island. So I was like, all right, let's be closer to home, to be near her parents, the grandparents. We want the support system. So I was like, I have no idea what the hell I'm going to do in New York, but I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out like I always do. And
Yep.
I ended up going back to college. I enlisted again in Farmingdale. So I started going to Farmingdale State College, and I was working as a 638 steam fitter in the union.
Oh, really? Ah,
Yeah.
it's a good little gig. Who got you
Yeah.
into the steam fitters? Because no one's just getting into that, man.
I had a
I know
friend
you
who
had a
goes,
nice
"You ever been a
hookup.
steam fitter?" I go, "What the hell is a steam fitter?" He goes, "Well, we pretty much designed, maintain, and do all the pipes and whatnot in a building, that operates water, heat, steam to create energy." I'm like, "Sure, sign me up, dude. I don't know." And they had a military program called Helmets to Hard Hats. And I was like, "Sure, I'll come in." So I come in for an interview, and one of the guys was actually a Navy veteran. And he goes, looking at your resume, says you have a Purple Heart. How'd you get a Purple Heart? Kind of like doing one of those, like they give it to everyone these days.
Yeah.
So I go, "Sir, I
Sure,
got,
you got a Purple Heart.
yeah," and him being a Navy vet, he goes, "You got a Purple Heart?" I was like, "Yes, sir." He goes, "What'd you do?" I was like, "I lost both my legs in combat." And he goes, "Fuck you mean you lost both your legs in combat? I just watched you walk in here with both your legs." And I go, "I said, sir, I have prosthetics on." So I pull up my pant leg. He goes, "You're hired. You start Monday morning." I go, "Is that it?" He goes, "Can you climb the ladder?" I said, "Yes, sir. Whatever you need me to do." He said, "Can you go on a harness?" I go, "Yes, sir." "You afraid of heights?" I said, "No, sir." So here I am Monday morning working in the freaking middle of Manhattan, and I was actually off the Hudson on my first job in Harlem.
Okay.
131st and Broadway is the Columbia University project. Here I am hanging upside down, welding and cutting and putting pipes together. I was like, "Oh my God, this is a job right here. This is like a real
Hell
job.
yeah.
I never had anything like this.
And you enjoyed it, I'm assuming?
Loved it. Loved every bit of
Oh.
it. I wouldn't have left if it wasn't for the police department. You're getting called for that.
So how did that come about? When did you first have the idea that you wanted to join?
So I had been traveling with that softball team, and for the longest time, um, we were playing against softball, military teams, first responder teams, and I was in pretty good shape. And I'm okay. I'm in good shape now. I'm not as fast runner as I was then. I'm getting older. Things are slowing down a little bit, but I'm still keeping up with the runs and whatnot.
Yep.
But the guys would go, "You don't want to be a cop? You guys are all in great shape. You don't want to do something different?" And I go, "I'd love to be a cop, but I've never seen it. I've never seen an amputee cop, less alone a double amputee cop." So he goes, "Oh man, come on, you should take the test." And my cousin at the time, Jeremy, was like, "Dude, just take the test. What's it gonna hurt? You're a veteran. It's free. See what happens." Well, being a Marine, as you probably know, we're not the sharpest tool in the shed. So I wasn't expecting to score anything high on the test. And I get the test back, and I'm like, "Holy shit, I did very well." And being a Spanish-speaking officer, I'm on the Spanish-speaking list. So like, "You're gonna get called," and I'm like, "Holy shit, I'm gonna get called." So now I'm going through the process of this whole thing, and I'm having like some thoughts. I'm like, are they gonna say anything? Are they gonna tell me something? Like, what am I gonna do? And at this
Yeah.
point, nobody knows I'm an amputee because all I've done is taken the written exam. So now I show up with my bag and my running legs, and I show up to take the physical, and they're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, come here." So they're like, "Do you have any documentation that shows you're physically fit to be a police officer?" Like, "Yeah, I got a copy from my doctor, and he said they're great. I'm great. I'm good." They're like, "Well, do we need to pay for your prosthetics when you come on?" I was like, "No, sir. The military's going to take care of that. You don't have to worry about anything. Just give me a chance." You know, Talk about perseverance. I come in and take the test, and my dumbass was trying to be cute, and I was trying these new legs out, and one of the bolts came loose, so I ended up failing my run.
Ooh.
So you get, as you know, you get 2 weeks to come back and take it again.
Yep.
So they're like, this kid's gonna have to burn 5 minutes. There's no way he's gonna come back and pass. So sure enough, I go home and I tell my wife, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go back. I failed. This is probably a sign from God. I'm not gonna keep doing this. And I end up going back 2 weeks later, push-ups, sit-ups, run, let's go. They're like, all right, the kid wants to be here. So I'm taking my test. I'm getting through the polygraph, the psych, the medical. Everything's good. They're waving me on. And now we're at the last step. Give me 1 second. I can't believe my phone is actually about to die, but I have a little charger. Hold on, let me plug it in.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, sorry about that. Let me just plug
Yeah,
it
no
in.
sweat, brother. Be editing anyway, so that's no problem taking that out too.
All right. Yeah, I didn't want it to reset on us, and then I have to restart.
Absolutely.
So now I'm sitting here and I'm going through the whole process, and I'm like, this is such a surreal deal. I'm getting ready to embark, as we say, getting ready to embark on a new journey, and I have no idea what the hell I'm getting myself into again.
Yep.
Here I am getting yelled at the academy for the haircut and your shoes shine and blah blah blah, and the whole game, and I'm like, what the hell did I get myself into? And now as the program starts going, I'm like pushing myself, and I'm doing great.
And then there's no roadblocks as far as anyone being like, we don't think you can do this. Like, there was nothing negative said or anything you had to do differently.
Honestly, as of right now, at that moment, no. Everything was good. They were being supportive, and they
Great.
asked me, do we need to get you a shower chair? Do you need, any adaptations in a vehicle? Because I don't know if we can be able to do that. And I go, no, I'm good. I don't need anything. I said, I want to do this just like everybody else. If I can't do this shit, then obviously it's not meant for me. And they respected that.
Yep.
And I'm happy that they respected that. So we're going through the program, we're doing the runs, we're doing the DT, we're doing the PT, we're doing all this stuff, and I'm like, this stuff is awesome. I love this stuff. This is like the military world again.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a purpose again. I'm like, wow, I found my purpose. I found my niche. And like anything else, the only thing that was really stopping me or slowing me down was academics, because I never applied myself. It was the use of force test and this test and that test, and you're like, oh my God, it's so much stuff. And I was just surrounding myself. My class was the military class, so a lot of my classmates were extremely supportive and helpful. We would be doing like study dates at Panera, go over test questions and use the force and this and that. And people were coming. Hey, what do you got written down for this? What do you got written down for that? And that's where I had to apply myself, because I was like, wow, you got a lot of stuff. The penal law, VTL, CPL, like that's a lot of stuff. You're pretty much like an attorney. You're learning all this new stuff, and I had never had to apply myself mentally like that with this material. So that stuff was, that was kind of my challenge right there.
So that's great. So physical was basically nothing. Just did what you did. And
hold on. Physical, it was tough. I'm not going to say it wasn't tough. We were running, and they were beating us up. Like, we were getting pushed to do a good PT program. But to me, what most people thought I was going to maybe have a difficulty was the physical aspect of it. But I knew, because I was training and running and doing all this stuff, I'm like, dude, the PT stuff's going to be great. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to have to push, but not something I'm worried about. What I was worried about was more the academics, aspect of it.
Okay. And at this point, had you run any marathons?
No, I had done doing all that stuff. I only run like the Disney half marathon. The other marathons that I did.
Okay, so 13.
Right, yeah. 13.1.
All right, so you're well versed in running. It's not like the Academy threw you for a loop there.
No. It was definitely challenging, just because it's different than running by yourself with headphones and whatever else. Now you're in a formation. You're, expecting to respond to commands and all this other stuff. So there are a couple of, of loops in there. But again, it was great because we were working together as a unit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll tell you, for people that have never been in the military or policing, the brotherhood cannot be explained. Like, I wish every man would be able to experience going into battle with 3 or 4 dudes next to him that would kill or die for him. Because as
Yeah.
you know, man, there was no feeling like that. I mean, I miss that more than I could say. It just gets in your soul. You either love it or it's just a job to you, and it was never just a job to me. And
Yeah.
I assume it's the same for you.
No, absolutely, absolutely. You got to depend on the people that you work with, and it's an intimacy thing. You build this intimate trust with people that you know damn well. Not that they're gonna have your back when people are talking shit about you, because that's high school stuff. These
Yeah.
people are gonna save your life, and you feel like you're gonna reciprocate it when it comes down, to that moment.
Yeah, to me, there's nothing more noble than being just writing that blank check, man, up to and including your life, and especially for perfect strangers who, frankly, mostly don't care about you. But as far as your boys, knowing that that guy or girl next to you will die for you,
Yeah,
man, you do not see that too often in life, and that is powerful. It's a
yeah,
bond that can never be broken.
absolutely.
And I see that you good friends with Johnny Puentes, who I trained in the second precinct. He was one of my best recruits. Great kid.
My boy.
So yeah, it's great having. It's like family, man. It's great having family like that. So academy goes well. You get out. You get assigned to what, the first precinct, right?
First precinct.
Which, for those who don't know, first precinct encompasses some pretty tough areas in Suffolk County, Long Island, Wyandanch. What else you guys that have? That's horrible over
Amityville,
there.
Copac,
Amityville,
Winners.
Copeg. Yeah, it's like the Long Island Railroad, man. The end of that Babylon line.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a tough area to work. So what'd you think of it?
I thought it was fun. It was a great time. I was really hyped, to go on patrol, because now you feel like I finally get to do my job. And it's difficult. It's difficult because you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. It's different than the military. In the military, you got 20 brothers and sisters. Oh, should I say for me, it was brothers because it was the infantry, and you got 20 other savages that are getting ready to go to combat with you in war, and you're like super excited and stuff. And now I'm in a police car by myself.
Yeah,
And you're just like, well, this feels a little weird. I'm here by myself. They trust me. They trust me to go to these people's houses and do this, and you start to get the rhythm. Start to get the rhythm. I had a great FTO. Pete Cucciara was incredible. He was 20 plus year veteran. Shoes were still shine. Pants were all squared away. Shirt was squared away. He took me to every call you can go on. Every 10 code was covered pretty much by the time I was done FTOing. And it was awesome to see officers backing each other up and helping to really close out the call and really, I guess, like finish the mission almost in the military, making sure that we go home safe at the end of the day. So there was difficult times, where you had to see stuff that not the regular person or the typical person in society has to see. And I'm surprised how well we managed that stuff without as much training as we get now. Training has
yeah,
gotten a little bit, I can't say better. It's gotten more exposed. We do a lot more training because of the reactions and the experiences that people have had in the past. So, you deal with certain things. And again, I've always been the talker. I talk to all my friends. Hey, man, that was kind of a fucked up call. What'd you think? Like, yeah, man, I've never seen that before. And just being out there and putting it out there and not really, engulfing yourself in it was, I
yeah,
think, kind of like one of those
yeah. Just
helpful things.
internalize. Yep.
Right.
No, it's smart. It's smart. And just slightly off topic, you mentioned having a great FTO. For those who are watching who are current law enforcement, especially field training officers, that is a huge responsibility, and many guys take it very lightly, and I think it's a huge mistake. It's not fair for you to be in that position. You potentially have that recruit's life in your hand. In addition to those 2 weeks you're training him, you're letting him go, and essentially certifying that he's able to be on his own. And it's incumbent upon you, with all those years of training, to show them all the different scenarios, to show them, handcuffing techniques, to show them, the law. A lot of kids, a lot of guys come out and not well versed in the law, and I think that creates a lot of anxiety with our police officers. That these young kids have no idea what they're doing because they never learned it. No one taught it to them. You have this prescribed syllabus in the academy, but it's so in depth what you need to learn, and it's such a limited amount of time to do it that you need to keep studying afterwards as you get out of the academy, because the law is a weapon. It can be used as a weapon if you know it. And especially seeing these YouTube videos now, just for instance, people filming in public and these officers going up to them, not knowing that there's no reasonable expectation of privacy in the public, and people can videotape you all day long If they interfere with your job, that's a different story. Now you can hit them with an obstruction charge. But simply to videotape you, you see constantly guys walking up and telling these people they're demanding ID. No, you have no reasonable suspicion this guy committed a crime, is committing, or is about to commit a crime. So you have no legal right to ask him for his ID or demand his ID. And they put themselves in bad situations. And I think a lot of them go to work scared because they don't know what to do physically. They don't know what to do mentally. And, it's incumbent upon guys who are training these guys and girls to make sure to get them to a level of proficiency. And if they're not there, to help them get there to where they're comfortable being on the street, man. Because going to that job every day, I can't imagine being scared. And I've seen a lot of men and women that are. And it's not good to start off like that.
A lot of people don't recognize how much goes into being a cop either. I can honestly say that. That was me. I'm embarrassed to say that. I was on patrol, and because everything moves so quickly, you are learning on the go. But things like, search and seizure, that stuff is so important. The Fourth Amendment is incredibly powerful. Search and seizure is a huge thing that cops get jammed up on all the time, and cases get thrown out. And I, started studying for the detective interview and the sergeant exam and this and that and the other, and I got back into that information, and I was like, I should fucking know this stuff. And I didn't. I definitely didn't do that when I was on patrol. Oh my God, like what could have happened? So sometimes just being open again and vulnerable again to ask people like, hey, Mike, I don't really know this. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Oh, I arrested the guys on this. Can I do this? Like, you should be able to ask questions. And I think a lot of the new guys are not asking questions because a lot of FTOs are younger and they maybe feel like they're not as approachable. But I see some pretty good FTOs. And I ask a lot of questions. I go, hey, man, what's up with this? Like, can I do this? Can I do that? Oh, I shouldn't have done this. Okay, let's not do that next time. Like, so I think what you said is powerful, is the importance of an FTO really does dictate what kind of cop this person's going to be. Are they going to be the cop that does things the right way? Or are they going to be the cop that just kind of like gets away with doing the wrong thing for a long period of time? And
Yep.
I see it out there all the time. Guys are starting to do a lot better. FTOs are starting to, teach some of these things and making sure that when they do things, they do it the right way so that the trainee is able to, get some pretty good knowledge.
Yeah, I agree. And, one thing, it's a very ego-filled profession for good or bad. And my thing is, don't be afraid to ask. I always tell young guys, girls coming out, model yourself, watch the great officers, watch the great detectives, watch the great supervisors. Model yourself after them. Take a little bit of him, a little bit of her, a little bit of him, a little bit of her. And if you don't know something, go up and ask her, man. They'll be glad to tell you. Don't have that ego to where you think you know everything or you can't ask for help. I remember I was training someone. They were 21 years old. I was probably early 50s. I had, over 25 years on. And whatever it was he taught me, I'm like, see, bro? I'm like, I didn't know that. I'm like, you had literally 5 minutes on this job and you just taught a 25-year career guy something. So never go through that job. You should be learning something every day, man. Never go through that job thinking you know everything, and never go through that job being afraid to ask. And again, if you're modeling yourselves after these great cops, most of them are fantastic to talk to and they have no problem helping you. You're not going to model yourself after that crazy, arrogant, condescending cop, number one. And, number two, consequently, you're never going to ask him for help, nor do you want to get it from him or her. Go to the other ones that are showing humility towards other cops and who will be glad to help you out. Because again, as I said, there is nothing worse. I just can't imagine going to that job every day afraid, whether it's physically afraid that you can't handle yourself or mentally that you don't know the law. You're not sure what people call you and stuff. Especially in today's society, everything's filmed. You don't want to be viral. And worse than that, man, if you do something where you're liable, they can come after you, and that's the last thing you want. Listen, if you make a mistake and your heart's in the right place, cool. You're gonna write down what you did. You're gonna write down why you did it, and it's gonna be usually you're gonna be fine. But doing something that you know is wrong because you have no idea what the hell you're doing, that's gonna get you jammed up.
That's tough.
So yeah, it is. So how much time did you do in the first precinct now?
So I did like 3 or 4 years because I went over to community relations for a little bit. I did community relations bureau, a position that opened up, and I had a pretty young kid at the time. And I was like, oh, the schedule works pretty good. It's kind of cool. Different aspect of the job. I get to talk to people and listen how things are done. We work on crime patterns, crime trends, and neighborhood watch, and we do the meetings and coffee with a cop, and it's very different from police work.
Right.
So, which is important because that's kind of how we build, reputations and build trust in the community. And I was like, well, this is kind of cool. And then I think like a year time frame, I get a call around probably the same time you got the call for the academy, and they said, "Hey, listen, a position's opening up. We're looking for a military guy to help out with the drill force stuff, and you have the military background, and people like you. Like, what are your thoughts?" I go, "I don't know. I'm kind of happy where I'm at right now. I'm not gonna lie. Monday to Friday, weekends off. I'm there for my family." And they go, "Well, this is Monday to Friday, weekends off too, and I think you have a pretty good impact on the recruits," which is why my voice sounds like this, by the way. We just started new class Monday.
That explains it.
So that's why my voice is a little raspy. But I said, all right, you know what? This is 5 years ago now. I go, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a shot. I'll go. I'll see what it's like. What are these kids they're not going to listen to me. What do I got? I got 5 years on the job at the time, 4 years, whatever it was. And they're not going to care what I got to say. And sure enough, when they started seeing me running and they saw me doing DT and they knew my story, it was like I was building a little bit of respect and credibility. And these guys were like, hell yeah, like, that's what I like. I like to see that. And then I was getting to know my stuff and I was teaching classes and I was like, this is actually kind of fun. And now, more than anything, Mike, I think this past year, I've been diving so deep into the books with all the search and seizure, the penal law, the CPL, like studying for sergeant exams and detective this and that. I'm like getting excited again because I'm like, I feel like a kid. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like I love what it's like to know what the hell I'm talking about rather than somebody asking me a question. I'm like, oh, I don't know. And things I should know, and of course, you probably know the information. You just don't remember how it was presented and
Yeah.
how to articulate, these things, so it's definitely been a very cool ride.
That's great. Listen, knowledge is power in any way, shape, or form, man. And it's great to have it if you're speaking from this perspective of knowing, then no one's ever going to trip you up. And especially in your job now, you must feel so confident now as you're teaching these young kids, and that's exactly what they need. So what are your plans now going forward?
Honestly, I want to see myself, progress a little bit, whether it's go down the detective route, take the supervisor exam, see what else is out there. That's the gift of our job,
Yeah.
is that we have so many different units that they say you should move around every couple of years, every 5 years or so. And considering I've been at the academy for about 5 years, I think it's time to do something different, see where else I can learn and what else I can do to help, other cops, the community, whatever else. So we'll see what happens. I'm just excited to see what the next chapter of life is.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. And yeah, it's a smart idea to switch around every 5 years, I think, expose yourself to different things. So kudos to you. And how about off duty? What are you doing as far as working with veterans? What are you doing in that aspect?
Off duty, I'm still playing with my travel softball team. We travel over the country playing against veterans, first responders. I think it's like such a medicinal thing to be able to see people, kind of like I did with Josh. So when we go to these communities, it never fails. They always bring a son or a daughter or somebody who's missing a limb, and they go, look, this is what you're capable of doing. So I think that's still important because it was kind of ingrained in me, and it's my foundation, so I'm able to play on the team and travel. I get involved with different organizations. Limb-Kind Foundation is one of them. They work with children, adults with prosthetics and disabilities, and I got involved with this really cool project called Show Your Shine. They're actually doing it in Huntington this year in the 2nd Precinct.
Oh, really?
At the Paramount, they do something called Show Your Shine, and they do a walkway, a runway to show off your prosthetics and what else. And it's empowering kids and adults, to show that anything is possible. These kids, these adults, they're in the medicine field, law enforcement, the military, out in the community. So it's an opportunity for kids to feel like, I am special. And I fell in love with that project. So I've been doing that. So I'm getting ready to do that in January coming up. I get involved with soccer clinics, softball clinics, whatever, Hey, you want to be on my podcast? I'm like, yeah, sure. Why not? I just want to be a part of life. I want to be a part of doing more than just police work, more than just being at home, more than just being a dad or a husband or a friend. I just want to be well-rounded. I just want to be out in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's beautiful. It's so noble, And the fact that you're getting involved with kids who are going through these things. Listen, man, no one wants to be different, especially a child. But for them to see guys like you and how strong you are mentally, physically, so they know there's a role model, man. Look what Matias has done. I could do the same exact thing. It's a beautiful thing to see them and give them hope and inspire them.
I think
So
they
I applaud you for
I think they
that.
do a lot. Honestly, I think they do a lot more for me than I do for them. And I know their parents always feel otherwise because they say how important it is for the kids to see us. But I just get such a good kick of serotonin and every other thing going through me when I'm there and I see these kids smiling and laughing and joking and, like really happy when other people are miserable with what they got, and I feel for them. I empathize with people who aren't quite happy right now because we've all been there. And
Yep.
it's our obligation, as society to help each other, to be there for one another. And as a police officer, you're not just writing freaking summonses and locking people up all the time. It's our job to be a role model, an example out in the public. And I do try to set the example. I do try to do the right thing. I'm not by any means perfect, by any means. I
None of us
still
are.
do things that I would like to do better, but I also strive every day to be a little bit better and to just help somebody's day be a little bit better. That's it.
That's fantastic, brother. So let me ask you, your advice, someone comes to you, they're going through it, and they're going through pretty badly. What's your advice to them?
I think the biggest advice that I can give them, number one, is just let them know how incredibly strong they are for coming to you. Because that's already number one. The first problem is having people come out for help, being
Yep.
vulnerable, being able to be approachable
Raise your
and
hand
say,
is tough.
100%, 100%. I would say that it gets better. It always gets better. And I've learned so much in the last couple of years. And I always wondered why people used to get those tattoos that say, this too shall pass or whatever. Is because you finally start to embrace that life doesn't always have to be perfect. That
Yeah.
not everything always has to be perfect. Because they always say the same thing. You can't feel good without feeling bad. You can't see positive without having negative. You can't have rain without having sunshine. Kind of that whole deal. So I realize that people that have kind of gone through it and now are on the other side and living their life and experiencing this incredible amount of peace that is what I chase all the time. I don't care about the money. I don't care about your house. I don't care about the car. I want peace, man. I want to feel at peace with myself and calm. And I know you know that feeling because you feel it. You feel like this sense of like
Yeah.
like that breath that you get that you breathe through your nose out through your mouth and that sense of relief. So I would just tell them it gets better. Stick it out, and once you get through it, you'll see like the reward that you get from being able to do this, have these conversations, empathize, be able to relate to these tough moments in life. In the Bible, it says when you go through trials and tribulations, not if. Everybody's
Exactly.
going to go through them. We all lose our mom and dad. We all lose loved ones and brothers and sisters. And unfortunately, it doesn't say when and it doesn't say how. But there is a verse in the Bible that says that sometimes God takes people in a weird time, whether it's a young adult, whether it's a baby, whether it's for whatever reason, because God knew what was going to be that outcome, and they didn't want them to suffer. And again, it's faith driven. So sometimes it's difficult to believe in something and trust in something you can't see. But I drink an energy drink, and I eat food, and I drive a car, and I get in a plane, trusting people and resources that I can't even see.
Yeah.
So for me, like what I'd like to think that I give advice to people is dive into what works for you.
Yep.
Here's what works for me. This is what works for Mike. This is what works for Mickey. I don't care what it is, but just find what works for you and run with it, man.
Yeah, that's great advice, brother. My new philosophy since I've gone through my healing journey is life is beautiful. Listen, man, there is going to be negative or just devastating things that come into everyone's life. It ebbs and flows. But on the whole, life is a beautiful thing. So you must appreciate everything you have. And when those tough times come, you have to feel it. You have to heal from it. The only way out is through. You cannot push it down. You cannot dull it with substances. But you know what? Those times are a lot less usually than the good ones are. So once you get through those bad ones, bam, you're going to be on to the beautiful ones again.
Absolutely.
And, we all must just appreciate everything we have and just look at life with gratitude. Don't look at the shit you don't have. Look at everything you do have, and
100%.
that'll make you appreciate it all.
Absolutely.
Brother, this has been a fantastic conversation.
Awesome.
I thank you. If people want to get in touch with you, please tell them how to do so. All the links will be in the bio, of course.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, my social media is public for that reason alone. It's just I want people to see the positivity, or should I say, the positive side of things. I post about my bad days too. I post stories. I post, quotes, verses. I'm a little well-rounded, because you know what happens when you start focusing on negativity. All you see is negativity. So it's very easy to go on social media and see negativity, 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 negativity. So I try to just post positive. So at some point, like you said, you start to lose friends. I get it. My numbers have shifted when I start posting things about God, or when I start posting things about mental health, or reaching out, or here's my podcast, or here's Mike podcast, or whatever I'm doing. Hey, listen, the people that are meant to be here right now will be here right now, and you might lose them, in the process, and you might regain them in 3, 4,
Yeah.
5 years from now. So I stopped trying to impact the world, and I just try to impact the people around me. It'll get better. So yeah, my social media is indeed USMC. And then our podcast is Another Cop's Mentality. That's on Spotify, iTunes, and stuff. We talk about a lot of the same things you and I are talking about. This is no competition. I think it's just
Absolutely.
resources. We are resources for people, because people that hear you on yours might be able to, compare and contrast on mine, and people on mine might be able to compare and contrast on yours. So really, that's all we need to do is just put resources out there for people to know that help is out there. Things will get better, and give yourself a little grace.
Yeah, absolutely. Give yourself grace is huge. And just what you said, I never feel like I'm in competition with anyone else because unfortunately, there's millions out there that need this. And there's always going to be more customers and there are people like us who are doing these things. But again, as you, man, I just want to reach as many as I can and change as many lives as I can because guys and girls going through it right now, I'm telling you now, it's a vicious cycle. I've been there. Matias has been there. But once you get out of it, again, life is beautiful. You could be happy again. You could wake up. You could get back those pieces of soul that you lost, that these jobs took from you. We know what it does to you, mentally and physically. But I promise you, there is a way out. And again, that is true. So, Matias, thank you again, brother. Love this
Thank
talk.
you.
Love all the stuff you're doing. And I know we'll be talking again in the future.
Absolutely, man. Thank you very much for having me and your time.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Take care. We will see you soon.